Welcome back to True Print for Life. I'm your host, Christina Vera.
And I'm your co-host, Maylin Sambois. And today we're so excited. As always, we bring really cool people to our podcast. And today is definitely not short of that because we have someone really special to us who's been just an incredible friend, an amazing community leader, a woman of faith, and someone that's just really like a go-getter. So I was so excited for you guys to meet who she is. We have Mrs. Brishundra McGrier here with us today. Welcome, Brishundra.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We're so excited to have you. I have a beautiful bio of her. I'll give you a little bit, but I feel like as our conversation goes, you'll get to know her a little bit more, and we'll post her full thing on our social media so you can read all about it. But she was born and raised in Low Country, South Carolina, she's a servant leader who dedicates her life to God, family, community, and education. She's a wife. We call her to P. Mom to Brianna and Sanaya. She's a sister friend to so many beautiful, amazing people. She's just a really great woman to know. She's a member, I have to say this is very important, Delta Sigma Theta sorority for all of you sisters out there. She's a singer on the praise team for her local church. She does grief ministry and the Purpose Center Church here in Westerville, Ohio. And she is a math genius.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Like if your child, anyone, me, ever needs math support, Brishundra is incredible with that. She has a gift for education that's rare to find. And we'll learn more about that in our conversation with her. But she's just really someone that when you meet her, she uplifts you. And her bio doesn't do her justice to all the amazing things that she does. So with that, we'd like to welcome Brishundra to the podcast. And Brishundra, for those that don't know you, share a little bit about you and your journey.
All right. Thank you. I will say congratulations, ladies, on your major accomplishment. I actually met one of my students here last week. He came up to me and surprised me. I didn't know he was here. And so he talked about the impact I made on his life in math and how he graduated from OSU and he's thinking about moving to California. So it was great to see him here. Maylin actually was the one who opened up that door for me. It was literally a email interview because she connected me with the woman in charge at that time. And so that was a great experience. So I am from South Carolina, born and raised. We've been in Columbus 10 years now. So I guess I'm a transplant. And I just find Columbus just an amazing city. I remember first moving here, my oldest was very young and we went to Walmart and she was like, "Oh, Mom, everyone's so nice." Because leaving South Carolina, we went straight to the north, which was a different transition. Mm-hmm. But coming here, it felt like home. I got to meet so many amazing people. And just, I think just starting out, not knowing anyone here and seeing you two, that really inspired me. And I would show up to all of your things. So just to see your journey has been so beautiful. And I'm glad my girls got to experience it. And I realized after many sister friends told me that I'm a connector, like I didn't know what that was. And so the more and more I think back, and even last month during Women's History Month, I made a little movie and it showed like my girls and how many organizations they've been in and just the impact. And so all that coming full circle and realizing that I've experienced that. So it's so amazing and beautiful just to be able to refer moms and girls and, others to your program. So I'm just grateful for that. And my heart is in math. So I was doing leadership with women for 10 years. And I used to say, well, once I hit 10 years, I'll be fine. And so I'm just grateful for those relationships because they continue to transpire to new things that I have going on in life now. I feel like it's full circle. So now I'm back with kids in math and even STEAM. So that has been a true blessing. And so just really stepping out of the way and let God do the work because our plans are not his. And just every day, just watching how it unfolds. And it took some low points, some darkness just to get to where I am, but just knowing that I won't give up. And so, yeah.
I love that. So where do you think you're passionate? Like, was there a point in either your childhood or adolescence, like what inspired you to want to go into that space of education, especially like in math, with that being, I really always feel like that's such a special gift to be able to do. And then the fact that you do that in helping so many young people really also find a love for math. So where does that come from?
So when I was younger, so even elementary, middle, and high school, I had amazing math teachers. One particular stands out. She was my 7th grade math teacher. Her name is Miss Lemon. She was just so funny. Like her personality was always fun loving. And so she made math fun. Like I think one time she even jumped out of the window. I don't know, in her classroom, but she was just, she was just an amazing woman. And so going through school, still having those great math teachers. And then when I got to college, I actually majored in math computer science my freshman year. And I realized computer science was not where it was for me. So I felt like I was running from education. And so luckily I did have some friends in that class and we had study groups. So I survived the computer science part. So then I went into secondary education. Even with that, like the content was, it was different because, grade school math and college math. And I just had different professors from different countries. So sometimes there was a barrier there. But I actually failed a class. And I don't think no one ever knew that. So I failed a math class. That particular class was a higher order math class. We had 2 tests. That was it. No homework assignment, no quizzes. So literally if you bomb both tests, you're done.
Oh my goodness.
So that was a wake up call for me. Because, when I was in high school, I didn't have to study. Like at all. But going to college, you have to put in those hours and study because the math is different. And so I took that same class under another professor and got an A. And so I say that to say, like, even after that, going into education, in our program, we had to pass the Praxis 2, the content area test, before even graduating. Wow. So I even sat out a whole year because my life scholarship had ran out. I didn't want to get any more loans. I ended up working night shift at UPS. And then just waited and then took the test again. I had failed that test 2 times. The first part was fine, like the Praxis 1, but the Praxis 2 was the content area. So I waited. And again, that test costs money. So it's like, okay, I keep paying money. And so I found the pictures the other day. So we went, me and 2 other women in the program went to a kind of like a study cohort class. And I found the pictures of the guy who taught it. He sent a thank you card and pictures of us in the class. And so after taking that class, passed it, and then I graduated. And so I taught 8th grade math for 3 years. I honestly thought I would retire from that particular school in that field, and we end up leaving South Carolina. So that was a huge transition, but I never lost that passion for math. So we moved to Chicago and I started tutoring business. And then that's how I kind of stayed connected to that passion.
And then moves happen because of your spouse. Like
yes.
Because he also is in education.
Yes, he's a chemist.
Yeah, so I was like a math genius and a
wow, there's a lot of math in your household. Man, if I had parents like you all, I might know how to do a lot more math. That's for sure.
You know, just because in the house, yeah. I mean, talk about those parenting. Remember that episode?
No, I feel like starting like your dad's a chemist or your mom's a math genius. Like you have to know how to multiply. I mean, you just have to.
I mean, maybe multiply, but I say like
I didn't ask for like no crazy math, just the essentials. Yeah. Like there wouldn't have been no problems there.
But the teachers do make a difference because I had great high school teachers for math, which I thought was a genius myself.
Right.
And then I got to college and I thought I'm a pre-kindergarten. Like what happened? Something is the teachers.
Yes.
Teachers make a difference. Like it's also dancer.
Yeah.
I almost failed math. I had to take a pass-fail and I was in AP like English and Spanish and advanced math. I went to college. I just did 1 math and then I'm done. And my love for math died in college my freshman year.
Wow.
You know, because I had a horrible teacher. So I think I'm so glad that you went into this education because you work with youth now as well. And you see how important it is, right? It was important for you to have a teacher that motivated you and inspired you. But then now in your role, right? Because you're now back kind of to education a little bit.
Yeah,
tell us about your role right now.
So, March. So it's been a year.
Yeah.
So
congrats.
I got to connect for a woman who was doing Saturday school. And so the particular school, I think it was like 80% that were failing. And so she started Saturday school. I volunteered, didn't even know who she was. And so after that first session, I met this little girl named Blessing. And I was like, okay, Lord, I hear you. And so I went home, looked her up, and she had been all over the news for the program she started. So I remember texting her and asking her if she knew of any other volunteer opportunities during the school day. Because at that time, COVID, I was home. I'm like, okay, this got to give. Like something got to give. I got to get out of this house. Mm-hmm. And so something told me, no. because I'm so used to volunteering and just, giving back. And then I kind of erased and kind of started the message over and asked if she had any position. And she said, well, matter of fact, I'm hiring because I have some grants coming in. I was like, oh, okay. So, long story short, that became a job opportunity. I started like towards the end of the school year last year in a school, actually your daughter's school at Mifflin Middle. And it was very eye-opening. I know students go through so much that we didn't have to even think about, from cell phones, from social media, all of that, and still seeing like nothing really changed as far as what they needed. Like they needed that passion, like teachers with passion, they needed discipline, they needed structure, and they just needed someone to care. And that mutual respect looks so different now because kids, they have a voice. Like, when we were younger, we didn't dare say anything back to a teacher, right? So now, like, they have a voice when they feel like they're being disrespected. And unfortunately, it does happen more often than not.
Yeah.
They will stand up for themselves. And so I think the difference is now, though, the village is not there, or it's not like it used to be. So you have students who are acting like parents at home, come to school and try to be parents for other students who are being mistreated. So trying to navigate that and letting them know you have a voice, but you still have to be respectful.
Right.
And more recently, an incident happened, and just things that were going on, and the kids thought it was okay. And I just had to really have the courage to tell them, no, it's not okay. And some of them felt like they couldn't even go tell their parents because their parents will come to the school and show out, as they say. And so, navigating that and still having some teachers look at me like, who are you and why are you standing up for these kids, right? And so I think that's the hard part, but still hearing God and saying, okay, I'm here for a reason and a purpose. And I advocate for teachers. Like, I've been a teacher, right? I advocate for students. I advocate for parents. I advocate for the village. Like, it takes everyone for students to be successful. So just being in that space has been different. But again, just knowing that God is leading me to have that courage to stand up no matter what the teachers may think. And so when you have one school with one grade level and one side of the building is preparing students, the other side is not, it's just difficult.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And it takes a lot of courage to do the work that you do, being able to step out and, acknowledge when something isn't right, whether it be, and for advocacy of young people or adults, and that's not something that everybody can just tap into, and so, for you in finding the courage, even to advocate for yourself and asking for a position, right? Instead of, even a volunteer opportunity.
Which for years is all we've done.
Yes. Yeah, because it's so ingrained when you have a servant's heart, you just want to do the work. It's not about the recognition, even though you need money to pay your bills, you're still like, well, I'll help, whatever I can do, and so do you find like, as you have become much more, it sounds like, even aware of just like who you are and what you bring to the table and what you bring to the world, can you speak a little to like how you have been able to really tap into that courage and really cultivate, you being able to ask for your worth, essentially?
So being surrounded by women like you all who actually go for it, and just trusting that process, and just knowing like God's timing is not my timing. So the plans I thought I had, it wasn't meant to be. And more recently, I lost my uncle in February, and he was like my favorite. He was that one who was a nurse, servant leader. Like, he represented the underprivileged, and he had a radio station called Voice of the People. So he would tackle those hard topics. And, growing up with my grandmother, my aunt who integrated school. So they went through all of that back then. And just knowing like his passion was parental empowerment, because parents don't realize how much power they do have, especially when it comes to schools. And so his passing was sudden. And so even before he passed, I was kind of like in a valley. I was kind of stuck, right? And just kind of navigate like, what is this for? Why am I here? And so listening to him and knowing like he didn't give up and he kept pushing. And like I went home to the funeral, and literally as soon as I got back, I was like, okay, you got to get up and you got to keep going. And so just having him like pushing me, because he believed in me. He referred me to parents. Like pretty much all my students in South Carolina was from a referral from him. So being able to be there in his last days and talking to him really lit that fire under me. So,
Wow.
yeah.
And it's just so like, you just never know what your gifts and your talents and where and how that will lead you.
Yeah.
And I think you hit something very, when you were talking about like this new generation of young people. We've talked about this all the time, and I talk about this all the time in my other work. It's just this generation is different. They, for the majority, they have found their voice. But then to your point, you know, they're dealing with so many outside things that it's sometimes hard for them just to come and be young people, just to be able to come and, you know, go to school, learn. We were talking about this in the last episode. It's like about the importance of self-care for young people, because as adults, like, you can become much more intentional about like, okay, I need a break. I need a girls trip. I need whatever I need. But then we don't always, and sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. We don't think about like, what do kids need, and how are they getting that opportunity just to decompress? Because things could have happened in your building back in our day, and it was an isolated thing. Nobody knew about it. Nobody was going to know about it, except the people that was there. But now with social media and like the need to be like a grown up outside of those walls, these young people are already so, in some cases, like, I hate to see it when I go in buildings sometimes. They just, they look so defeated, and their lives haven't even really started yet. So to, you know, your thoughts, and as you work with young people so closely every day, like what do you feel has happened to where this generation has shifted so much in the way that it has?
So a lot of factors. I know when I first got there, just taking that time to build relationships, and we hadn't started programming yet, but I would just show up just to, you know, get to know all the kids, talk to all of them. There's always one or two that will cling to you, and you immediately know that they don't get that attention at home because they follow you. And then even where some would become like, oh, you're a traitor. Like, so if I talk to other kids, like they want me to themselves. It's like, no, I'm here for everyone. So just building those relationships. And then a lot of the kids talk about how at home they have to be like mom and dad. They literally have to take care of their siblings, and they don't even have time to be a child. And so, so that and the attention, you can tell the ones who don't get that attention at home. And so that point is parents are working like 2 and 3 jobs just to make ends meet. So they don't have that time. And as heartbreaking as that is, like, you still have to empathize with the parents because, you know, they don't get all the services they need, or they're too, you know, embarrassed or prideful to do that. And so that's where I think that village comes in. And so I make it a point to connect with kids, to connect with the parents, even as one of the ladies that do the girls' hair. So she was going through a tough time. She has 4 kids. And so even with them being in school. And so I was like, well, let me just take the kids and you just go take a break, you know? And so just really being intentional about knowing who's around you and what help they need, because they're not going to ask for help most of the time. Right. But yeah, back to the students, like, and for me, the structure. So as unstructured, a lot of classrooms are, the kids still yearn for that. And, like, they want to be seen, they want to be heard, they want to feel like they matter, and they're not just a number, or just someone that's just sitting there who don't have a voice.
Right. You keep mentioning the village, and I really want to lean in on that because, to your point, you know, the village does feel gone, and I think it's been gone for quite a while. What are your thoughts on, like, could that come back, or what needs to happen to be the village again? Or I don't know that we know what happened to where villages
went away.
Yeah,
they went away when social media came.
I don't know, because neighborhoods are different now. Like, you got all these people that live around you. You don't even know who they are anymore.
Right.
Neighborhood.
I mean, when I was campaigning, I knock on doors in my own neighborhood, and that was the first time I ever met those people. And my husband grew up there. He lived there his whole life, and we've lived there as a family over 9 years now.
They knew his parents. Remember, they kept saying,
"What?" Yeah, they were like,
the older ones.
Yeah, they knew, like, the older ones who had been there. They remembered Ken's father. But like, I mean, the village, I love that you keep saying that, because there was a village. I remember when my mom had to work, my aunt would step in. You know, it would always be like one of my aunts. Usually my main aunt is the one I could think of, because my grandmother was sick and there was not a lot she could do to help my mother. But it just seems like the village is in fact gone. And part of my worry is that it's permanently gone, or I don't know how we go about bringing the village back.
So, speaking life into that, so I hashtag sometimes revive the village, because I think the want and need is still there. It's just like we don't know how to bring it back. And like you said, with family. So our family was the village.
Yeah.
Now it's like, I hear people sometimes say, well, I have to pay my aunt or my cousin or our mom just to watch my kids. Like, so that's a whole different take on it. So I think the money part, but it's really the time and effort you put into it. And just knowing, like I said, just being intentional about who you're surrounded with. So even as much as I pour into other girls, like I'm grateful that I have women are surrounding me who are not my family that pour into my girls just like they were family. And so just making sure you're around the right people. And because sometimes it gets hard. Because I remember one time back when I was doing 31, we would share about the statistics of self-esteem. And I remember sharing at a party like, yeah, the age is 9 that it peaks. And I'm like, whoa, I have that child at home who's that age. And so literally I had forgot about her, right? And so I had to really check myself into like, okay, you're out here pouring into other girls and staring this, but you have your child at home. Granted, they were still in programming and they were seeing things and doing things that were empowering. But for me as a mom, I had to make sure I put them first. But making sure I had, good empowering people in their village. And so now they look at them like aunts. And so it's just a beautiful thing. So really those relationships, I really push relationships, and then everything else will come. But yeah, there's hope for the village. And Columbus.
There's hope for the village.
Revive the village, and there's hope for the village. Like Columbus is like a melting pot, and just so many programs, and even for boys and girls. But just really taking it back to building that relationship with that parent and asking them outside of programming, what do you need? Like, reaching that family and serving that whole child. So yeah, they might be in your program, but they might not have a bed at home to sleep in. So
or
just,
food.
Right. So just making sure you're providing resources. I know y'all do an amazing job with that. So, you're providing resources and being able to serve not just a child, but that whole family. Because at the end of the day, they have to go back to that family.
They do. And I love that you said serving the whole child, right? So in one of our episodes, we were talking about how sometimes we work so hard, like serving the world. And then at home, right? This thing that we're trying to do outside and we're working so hard, is that even being done at home? Not because we don't want to, but because we're so pouring into others. So part of self-care for me has been like pouring into myself. Through our conversations, even Christina and I were like, wait, are my nieces and nephews okay? Are your kids okay? Right? Like, have we taken the time to really pause? Right. Because it doesn't serve anything for us, for the world to think we're awesome when our family is suffering, right? And that's intentional. So we're taking inventory. So I almost tell entrepreneurs, women, men, anyone that runs programs to help everybody. Are you okay? Number one. And then is the people in your home okay? Right? Are your immediate family okay? Right? Those closest to you, are your friends okay? Because you really want to start with your circle. I always talk about walking our talk, right? So even with our own team and staff, I'm like, I can't go out there serving the world and empowering women. And are women okay? Are our boards okay? Like, so we try to do a check-in with our team members and our board members. Like, besides work, which is very important, are you okay? Is there anything we can do to support you? Like, can I come and help you with something? And I think you're really good at that. Like, you embody that so well. I'm always like, I need to be a little bit better. You embody that so well. I am still amazed of how you're able. You're a connector, but you're an amazing relationship builder. I also believe you're really good at that. And I watch you. You're a great, she gives the best gifts. If you're not in her circle, I'm sorry, but she gives the best gifts. You're so intentional about being there to support others, right? Like, through my journey, you have definitely supported me a lot. God, so much. How did you find the time, right, to be there for others when we know there's so much going on in your life?
So, yeah, that's a very interesting question. And to that point, I had to really check myself. Because even when I had a team, I used to always hear in trainings, the 80-20 rule. I'm like, so I always had it backwards. I would pour 80 out and only had 20 left for me. And so as much as I knew about self-care and I talked about self-care for probably like a long, long time, and it wasn't until the pandemic hit that I'm like, oh yeah, you need to take care of yourself. Because I was always rushing or just procrastinating. So even to the point, this is personal, but like I wouldn't put on lotion because I'm like rushing, but really just taking time, setting that time, taking baths, bubble baths with a candle, just really pushing that self-care for myself. And just knowing like I can't do it all. And I told myself, okay, it's time to take off that Superwoman cape because you're not, right? And so even like multitasking, I used to think that was cute. No.
I think we all did at one point in life. We all thought that was the bomb.
Something's missing. Like I would forget this, or either I would start so many things and not finish, or just being intentional about checking myself with, making sure that I took time for me, not just saying it anymore, but actually doing it. And that was hard for me because I was so used to saying it. And even to the point where I would get like the monthly things like paying for the gym or paying for massages. And I thought that would help. It happened for a while, but then I had to really go back and really just set that intention and put it on my calendar and make those appointments ahead of time because otherwise I'm going. And before the pandemic, I was literally supporting everybody and everything. And again, I had to sit back and say, well, does this align with what I believe in? Yes, you want to support everybody, but everyone's not doing what you support, they're not on the
your
same
values,
those things. Yeah. And so you have to be careful with that. And so even going into grief share, I remember our pastor wife asking, she was like, well, the Lord gave me your name and your face and I want you to help me. I'm like, no. And I told her no twice.
Give me that message.
Right. I don't have time. And so she came to me the second time and I went home and prayed about it. And I was like, okay. And so I remember right before the pandemic hit, I prayed to God, I said, make room. I didn't know what that meant. And when I tell you the way, like in different areas of my life where that has come to fruition, I'm like, oh, that's what that was. And so I was asking him to make room, but wasn't sure, like career-wise, family-wise, and just friendships. So just being, they said, be careful what you ask for, but just being intentional about really sitting back. And the scripture that has led me throughout was be still and know. So just pausing, the pandemic made all of us sit down and really evaluate, like what are we doing? Like we're surviving, but we're not thriving. And so, and that was in every aspect, family, work, all of that. So just being intentional about that. And also that self-healing. So just going through the process and, like I said, making sure self-care and putting God first. Before it was children, husband, then God. So to really focus God, husband, then children. And so that has been a different journey as well.
How do you come up with that list of putting, like, I know God, definitely, I get God, but then you went husband and then children.
Yeah. So, like the whole marriage thing in the Bible. Yeah. So, yeah.
12 years, because your kids are going to grow up.
Yes.
Right? And you love them and they're your life, but you want to be intentional about fostering that relationship with your husband.
Yeah. And I think that's more of a generational thing because as women, we do so much and we always put our kids first because you want them to be good or you just want them to have a better life than you had. But to really prioritize that and carve out time for everybody.
And that's a challenge.
Yes.
Now, you've done a lot of things. You have pivot in the last year since I've known you, right? You've done a couple of things. I've been, you speak at schools, you speak in panels, you're doing all these amazing things right now. Do you have a thought about what the next steps are for you or some goals in the next few years?
Like I said, right now we just launched the STEM program. Interesting enough, years and years ago, when I thought about retirement, I was like, well, after I finish teaching, I want to charter a math and science academy.
I was going to say, when is it? We've been talking about this.
And so it's always been like a retirement goal, but I'm like, the more and more I'm into schools, I'm like, ooh, no, that's needed now.
Right.
So that is a big goal. It seems daunting and hard, but I do remember saying on my 31 journey, I said, well, if I make it to 10 years, after that, I'll be good because the relationships I've built and just to think about all the women that were on the team, like they have a specific area that goes into a school. So
just recruit all the teachers, guys. Don't be full.
So, So I guess that's the next big thing. I've seen kind of bits and pieces of the growth as far as those steps and kind of looking into what that looks like. Because every time I think about it, it is daunting, but I'm like, I'm not alone in it.
Yeah.
So it just takes some time to sit down and map it out. I do have sisters who are always asking, when are you going to open that school? So yeah,
And I'd be like, when are you helping with that school? Right? Like, so I think, let's be real, right? A lot of the times people are like, well, when are you doing this goal? And you're like, what you putting in it? What you got on it? Right? Like, what do you got on that? Because it's going to take talent, treasure, right? Like, just like, even when you talk about getting this building, like it was 12 years in the making, right? And even once you get it, it's not it. You have to furnish it. You have to do all of these things.
Right.
So I think your goal is amazing, and I'm excited to see it, because I think we do need a place where kids can come and feel safe and learn and have fun learning, and hopefully education come back in a better way. But then what pieces do you need, right? So and you said God's time is perfect, so you don't have to worry about like how is it going to happen. I think you want to probably start thinking about what is needed to happen, right? And let Him do the work. Like, just start putting it on paper. What do you need? And then as you have those conversations, well, these relationships you have built, I feel like I feel like it will come. You know. That's how I think it happened for us. So we're excited about that. You know, you were very quiet at one point, right, Brishundra? Like, you were someone that you would never be on a mic, and now you're on the mic all the time, which I think is fun, right? How you overcame that. What would you tell your younger self, right? Looking back, like, what would you say to that little girl or that younger woman?
You are fearfully and wonderfully made.
When you say those words, what do you hear inside?
You don't have to be afraid. Like, I didn't have confidence. And yes, I was with my mom all the time. My husband says I was sheltered, but I didn't have interest as far as like just hanging out. You know, I was in band, marching band. So I had my core friends and we were like the good kids. So it didn't bother me that we didn't go out to party or do things like that. But just knowing that it's going to be okay. Like, I literally walked with my head down in high school. I didn't talk to anybody outside of my core friends. And so, like I said, my mom, she worked hard. And I remember going to every sports activities with my brothers and, doing all that. So just knowing that you have people that are surrounding you for a reason, and like, God made you for a purpose, for a reason. And even though you might not see it or feel it in that time, like, it's all the process and that journey. And so I use the words ordained because every time something happens or I leave a space with women or men, it's just a testimony because I feel like it happened for a reason. So just knowing, sometimes it is a roller coaster, but God's plan, and just knowing that it's ordained. So he knows already what it is. We just have to trust Him.
Many times we don't stop to celebrate our accomplishments. Christina and I are working on this very much, so much. Is there something you can reflect on now, looking back, that you could be like, I would love to like highlight, this accomplishment, or I can take a second to reflect on, maybe some of your biggest accomplishments and, give yourself a pat on the back.
So if I go way back to my classroom years, right before we left, I was nominated for Teacher of the Year, but we were moving, so I had to decline. And just I taught 8th grade, but I had students who were like in the bottom level as far as math, all the way to the advanced. So like kids taking algebra in 8th grade. So I was able to close that gap. And in South Carolina, we did the MAP testing. So literally all my kids passed MAP. The end of course for Algebra 1 had hundreds, like the most hundreds, like perfect scores. Wow. And even a lot of A's, a lot of B's. And I think it was 1 C. So even that, just knowing like, I had kids that had perfect scores on this end of course test. And then the kids who were in transitional math, for them, like they met their MAP goals. And so for them to believe they could do it. Because when kids say they hate math or they fail at math, or it makes me cringe because I know a lot of that has to do with their teachers. Yeah. And so just having that experience. Was in a conference about 3 weeks ago, in a symposium, actually, a women's leadership symposium. And an older lady from Akron, she was like, what about this math thing? She was like, oh, I hated math. She's like, I never forget I had this teacher. She told her something, and literally she said that followed her. She was like in elementary school. She said that followed her the rest of her life. She was in college, and she took a math class, and she said the teacher had to feel sorry for her because she never once finish the test. But she was like, she had to pass just for showing up. But she said she was just fearful of even writing anything on a math test because of her experience in elementary school. And I'm like, she's like in her 60s. And so just to hear her say that, and I'm like, the impact that teachers are making on students these days, like it follows them, it matters.
Yeah.
And so, being able to tutor students, and I can tell you, number one, it's the confidence. It's not even the concepts or the math content, it's the confidence in letting those kids know you can do this. Like math is not hard. Like you do it every day, like you see it, so just building their confidence to feel like, oh, I can do this.
Yeah.
So
if math books can just use like money, currency as examples, I think a lot of us would get it better. Right? You can tell me like if you have $1 million divided by 5, right? Like, okay, I know 5 people get how much. Give me money, currency, right? Like maybe making examples that work. I thank you so much for being with us. This has been so good. I know that if people want to get in touch with you, like let's share with them how they can get in touch with you.
So I'm on Instagram. Brishundra McGrier, also on LinkedIn, Facebook, email is brishundram@gmail.com. And you can find my phone number on Facebook, actually. So yeah.
She's so accessible, guys. Like, if
probably too accessible, but it's okay.
Are you still doing the tutoring groups and stuff for families, or are you not doing that as much anymore?
So I am. So right now I do individual sessions.
Okay.
I actually started back in-person sessions about a couple of months ago.
Okay.
So on the weekends we meet at local libraries. And then for the summer I'll have groups too. Because just getting kids, kind of like pen pals, I used to write to kids in different states and things. So just to see the kids connect from different states, sometimes I'll leave them on. I'm like, okay, I'm leaving this up, but I'm gonna let y'all chit chat for a little while.
Nice.
And they connect. And just to know that they're not alone when they don't like math, And so another thing with that, like I am very intentional about the language they use when they're in the session. Like, oh, this is hard, or I can't do this. So we make sure we like turn that around just to really get in their mindset. Like, oh, you can, and don't use the word hard because automatically your brain's going to shut down. So just being mindful of those languages too.
Paraphrase hard to like, I'm learning, guys. That's an F, but I'm getting better. Right?
Yeah.
Well, if nobody tells you, just know that you're amazing.
Yes.
The student that you mentioned last week, I saw him too, and I was so surprised.
I know, he's a grown-up.
Yeah.
Threw me
wow,
off.
you're big.
And you have a lot of students that you help in that program, really, to that really were afraid, that lack confidence for many cultural reasons. And you really install in them like just the belief and the ease and the trust that for them is hard to build outside of our culture. So I want you to know that you made a tremendous impact, not just in their lives, but in the lives of their families. Because of that support, they graduated college. They are now providing for themselves and their families. So just know that your work is important and what you do is amazingly important. So thank you for all the work that you do. Thank you for being on our podcast.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, and we always close here with our favorite mantra. You guys ready?
Yeah.
It's bigger than you. Thank you so much for listening today. We're excited and we hope that you follow us on
Instagram, True Print for Life, YouTube channel, also True Print for Life. And make sure that you share, like, watch our videos. Make sure that you follow us on all streaming platforms.